So today we're going to talk about one of the most overutilized techniques in all of card magic in the double lift. Now the double lift is an excellent sleight to know. There are so many things you could do with it, from forcing to controlling cards to switching cards. However, it's a sleight that I think is done too much, and oftentimes where justification is needed, there's no justification. So today I'm going to cover just the basics for the double lift. I'm going to have another episode that's going to be a little bit more advanced, using more advanced double lift techniques. But today we're going to talk about two double lifts in particular that are very, very easy to do, and we'll get you started with that particular sleight. So first things first, the double lift is the act of turning over one card as two cards. So you are supposedly turning over one card on top of the deck. However, really, you've turned over two cards as one. Now, this has a lot of functions because imagine if we show a card in the Ace of Diamonds and this card supposedly goes in the middle of the deck. The spectator is convinced that that card is in the middle of the deck. However, we know it's on top of the deck. In the same sense, imagine that we tell the spectator to hold out their hand and we show them two of spades. By putting apparently that top card into their hand, we switch that card for a different one entirely. So you see the versatility of this move and its many applications. If, for example, we want to force a card, we could spread to the cards. The spectator could touch any card they want. And of course, this card, saying that it was in the middle of the deck, we could force it to be the Ace of Diamonds and control it in one subsequent movement. So without further ado, the double lift is going to involve a combination of two moves. It's going to involve a pinky break as well as the actual action of the lifting process itself. Now the question is, how do we get the break? There's a couple different ways. One of my preferred ways is to just gesture with the top card, and as I'm gesturing, I'm gonna push off with my left thumb and I'm going to pull back, which is going to allow me to put my pinky in there and establish a break below that card. So when I put this card back on top of the deck, I now have a break below two cards of the deck, which is exactly where I need to be. Another way that I like getting a break is from a dribble. Now, this is going to be a more advanced technique that we are going to cover in a different episode. However, this is going to be a very convincing double because you're able to show apparently the last card of the deck, and that in fact is a double. Another technique that I do want to talk about here is the thumb count. So for this, we're going to put pressure with our forefinger. We're going to use our thumb to riffle down exactly two cards on top of the deck. This is going to need a little bit of practice, but we're just going to riffle down one card followed by a second card, just like that. Now our forefinger is going to come up into this gap and we're going to let go of our thumb. So you notice what's happened now, that our forefinger is the one holding this break. And by lifting up with our forefinger and pressing down with our thumb, we're able to transfer that break to the pinky over here where we could establish it once again with the pinky. So one more time, we're riffling one card, we're riffling two cards. We put our forefinger there. Our thumb is going to bend that corner, so it's going to put pressure on that corner. And what that's going to do is that's going to lift this gap in the back, ready for your pinky. So now you are ready to do a double lift by having a thumb break in the front. This is a very easy technique. All we're doing, we're thumbing off two cards. We're putting our forefinger in the middle, holding that break temporarily. So our thumb could press down at that upper left corner, which is going to transfer that break to the pinky. We get let go with the forefinger and thumb, and our pinky is there to establish the break. That's a wonderful thumb count principle to get a break underneath two, even three cards. So if we need three cards, we just riffle three cards instead of two, do the exact same procedure, and now we are ready to do a triple lift, another move that's going to be necessary in place of some routines. So those are two techniques that allow you to get a pinky break below the second or third or even fourth card of the deck in preparation for the double lift. However, in Magic, there are many different techniques, some of which don't even involve the break at all. So you could do a double lift without doing any sort of pinky break whatsoever. Usually these techniques are inconsistent apart from years and years of practice, which is why I don't like using them in performance, even though they are something fun to learn. But in today's episode, we're going to talk about two double lifts that involve the use of pinky breaks. So right now we have a pinky break below the second card from the top of the deck in whatever way you want, whether that's the thumb method or whether that's the spread method over here while gesturing to the top card. And we're going to get into the mechanics of the double lift itself. So very simply, what's going to happen is we're going to come in with our right fingers into the break. Now my forefinger gets inserted into the break just like this. At about halfway, my thumb is grabbing that card. Now notice my middle finger is in the lower right corner, squaring the cards up against the palm of my left hand. So there's a couple different things happening here that are important to keep that card square. So it's not just coming in with your fingers, pinching it, and turning the card over. I'm coming in with my forefinger. My middle finger is in the back, bracing the card, so that at any time I could even lift the card up, and it's going to be very, very squared. You notice that there's no sort of determining edge on that card. So that's done, again, by having a grip with my middle finger in the lower right corner of the deck of the card, which allows me to grip those two cards as one very fairly. Now, once I've established this grip, I'm going to drag. My forefinger is going to be slightly above my thumb. I'm going to come in and drag the cards down and to the right. And you're just going to let those cards stay on your forefinger. You notice that they're being balanced by your forefinger. My middle finger is in the back, ensuring that the cards stay as squared as possible. Let me get this angle over here. And that's going to simply turn the card over on top of the deck. So all I'm doing is letting gravity bring that card down to my fingertips, where I'm able to just turn that card over by pushing up with my forefinger on top of the deck. So that's all that double lift entails. Now, this is a very convincing double lift because of the illusion of singularity. You notice that because of this grip, it allows that card to seem like it's just one single card. Now, this is going to take a little bit of practice to get down because initially the cards are going to split. However, in using the middle finger and in using the deck to square that card up, you're not going to have any issues doing this double lift. So one more time, with this position, we're going to use our forefinger to turn it over on top of the deck, and that is going to complete this first double lift. Now, to reestablish the break, that is one of the most crucial aspects of a double lift. Now, usually when using a newish deck of cards, you notice that there's a very noticeable gap between the top two cards, which are acting as one card, and the rest of the deck. We're going to exploit this in a number of different ways. You could either come in with your right hand and lift up naturally at this break, which is going to allow you to just lift up two cards, or you're going to do the same technique as before, which is by lifting up with your forefinger and pressing down with your thumb, you're able to transfer that break to the pinky over here, and now you could redo the same actions of the double lift, turn that card over on top of the deck, and you've successfully switched the card. That's one method that you could use. Another one is known as the Altman trap, which is my favorite way of reestablishing the break. So as far as what we want to do for that one, when we're in this position and turning the card over, instead of turning the card over and letting it fall flush with the deck, we're going to have the card fall and catch it with this fatty part of the thumb. So you notice that the thumb comes all the way down, and this portion right over here is where we catch that card right before we turn it over. So you see, we're allowed to catch that card right there fairly easily by just letting the card fall, and we're putting a little bit of pressure with the thumb inward in the deck, so the card has no choice but to fall on top of that little gap that you've created. Now, this is a very exaggerated gap. However, you're going to learn how to get it smaller and smaller. But this, we're allowed to do the exact same thing that we did before. By pressing with our thumb, we're going to create a noticeable gap that's going to transfer to the pinky. So we're going to let go with that fatty part, and that break has been transferred from the left side to the right side where the pinky is. So one more time, we're turning this card over. It's being caught by this fatty portion of the thumb. By pressing with our thumb downward on the little pip, what's going to happen is that we're going to have a break that's noticeable between the little fatty part that we're talking about and the pinky. But here's the best part. By just moving up with our thumb, we're just moving our thumb slightly, that's going to release the cards on that side and transfer the break to the pinky. So what this does is that essentially we're able to continuously have double lifts where we show that card on top of the deck in a very fair fashion. Now, of course, you don't want to do an action like this. You don't want to just turn those cards over singly, but it is possible with this technique, and is one that is going to be very useful because re-getting that break is one of the most important parts of the double lift. So that is what this double lift looks like in action. We're able to just show very fairly the three of diamonds on top of the deck. We're able to turn it over, maybe put this card in the middle of the deck. And with no extra action, that card is, of course, on top of the deck under our complete control. Now, the next double lift that I'm going to show you guys is one of my favorites. However, it's one that seems to be frowned upon by many magicians. And I think that with the proper justification, this double lift becomes pretty much invisible. And the way that looks is just like this. So we show the ace of clubs. We tell the spectator to hold out their hand. We put that card on top of their hand. And of course, in that action, we changed it for a different card entirely. Now, this double lift, again, is one of my favorites because it seems to be a very natural double lift. And the action of replacing the card on top of the deck becomes invisible with the action of asking the spectator to turn over their hand. So one more time, we're getting a break over here. This time we're going to come in from middle grip and we're going to lift up at the break. So we're just lifting up these two cards as one at the break, and we're showing the card to the spectator, just like this or like this, however it is that you want. Now, usually when I do this double lift, it's because I'm going to put this card on top of the spectator's hand. So it's going to be very challenging to do that without justification in putting this card on top of the deck and then putting it on the spectator's hand. So how do we justify it? By asking the spectator to hold out their hand. So you say, look, your card is not the ace of clubs, but sir, do me a favor, hold out your hand just like this. All right, I'm going to drop that card on your hand, put your other hand on top, and there you go. We've switched the card effectively. So all we're doing there is we're showing these two cards as one. We're putting it back on the deck for the reason of having the spectator hold out their hand like this. So we're showing them what we want them to do with the hand. If there wasn't a justification, this move would never fly. However, because of that justification, it's a natural and expected action to leave that card on top of the deck. So when we have the spectator hold out their hand, we could very fairly thumb off that top card, drop it on their hand, maybe tell them to put their other hand on top, and we switch the card in a very fair fashion. And I can almost guarantee you that the spectator will never remember that you've put this card on top of the deck and asked them to hold out their hand. To them, it will just seem like you held this card in your hand and you put it on their hand without doing any sort of action. However, I think we know a little bit better than that. So that is another double lift. That is one of my favorites. And I think is one that should be taken by many magicians with that proper justification. So more advanced lessons, we're going to talk about double lifts that involve lots of fancy sleights and a little bit more complicated versions. However, for these basic lessons, we're just going to cover those two. And I'm going to show you a basic trick that you could do that is actually one of my very favorite tricks to do with a double lift. So for this trick, we're going to have the spectator touch any card they want. In this case, they touch the Queen of Hearts. This card is, of course, lost in the middle of the deck, never to be seen ever again. And we tell the spectator that I'm not going to find this card. They're going to find this card. The way they're going to do it is by taking a card and actually sticking it right next to the card that they picked. So in this case, we're going to use the Queen of Spades. So we tell the spectator to pinch their fingers just like this, and we give them the Queen of Spades. Now we're going to riffle through the deck, and they could stick that card anywhere they want. So let's say they stick it right over here. They never let go of the Queen of Spades, and we go right here, your card, the 10 of diamonds. Of course, the spectator is going to respond negatively and say, sir, that was not my card. You say, oh no, sometimes it's this one. It's this one right here. The King of Spades, was that your card? Of course, the spectator is going to respond negatively. At this point, we ask the spectator what card did they pick, and they're going to say the Queen of Hearts. You go, no, that's impossible because, sir, that's the card you're holding. And of course, the spectator turns over the card and they run amok. So that's a very simple trick that all it involves is a simple double lift, and that's it. A double lift and a control, and you're good to go. You have this trick that is guaranteed to get massive reactions. So the way we get into this, we're going to have a card picked and selected. In this case, it's going to be the Ace of Hearts. Now we're going to get a pinky break right above this card like we discussed in a previous lesson. And we're going to do a double undercut to control this card to the top. So remember, you're transferring from that pinky to the thumb break. As you grab half the cards underneath the deck and you bring it to the top of the deck, then we grab all the cards below the break and we put it on top of the deck, thus controlling their card to the top of the deck in a very efficient fashion. Now, in the explaining of telling the spectator that we're going to give them a card and they're going to insert it next to whatever their card is, we're using that to get a break right below the top card of the deck in holding this card, which is in fact the spectator's card. So we have a very justified action for getting a pinky break here without any necessity for complicated moves. So we're doing our double lift. We tell the spectator that we're going to use the Queen of Diamonds. And again, we tell them to pinch their fingers just like this. That's going to be the justification necessary to drop that Queen of Diamonds on top of the deck. We tell them to pinch the card, and we're going to riffle in and tell them to put the card anywhere they want in the deck. So, of course, they're going to put it in. And it's very important at this point that you tell them not to let go of their card. So they're going to be holding onto their card like this, just like this, and you're going to be holding onto the packet of cards like this. So remember, they're holding the card just like this, and you're holding these two packets, showing them that they've cut the card right to the 5 of Spades. They're going to say it's not your card. You can play it up however it is that you want. You go, oh, sorry, it was probably this one. The 10 of Clubs. Was that your card? No? Okay. You know what? If you want, you could even try it again. If you want, you could have the spectator riffle up again. You could play however it is that you want. But ultimately, you're able to say the wonderful line to the spectator, which is, wait, okay, I'm sorry. What was the card that you picked? Of course, they're going to name the Ace of Hearts. And you go, no, there's no way it could be the Ace of Hearts because that's the card you're holding. And of course, they turn it over and they become vermuxed because they were holding clearly a different card and there was no way you could have switched it because apparently they were holding it in their hand the entire time. A lie that you and I both know is not true. So that's the trick. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys practice it. And the double lift is one of the most versatile slides. We're going to talk about more uses for the double lift in the advanced video. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. And once again, thank you for supporting me. It's really humbling that we hit that goal, and hopefully we could reach way beyond that. So thank you guys so much.